Well, congratulations to our Global Ambassador Award winners. I would like to, at this time, invite our panelists to join me here on stage. And while they're working their way up, I will just tell you who they are. Unfortunately, we did have a last-minute change because Minister Francis Gatari, the president of Rwanda, requested him back in Kigali. So we obviously had to honor that request. But we are delighted to welcome Arthur Asiimwe in his place. Arthur is the Deputy Chief of Mission at the Embassy of the Republic of Rwanda, based in Washington, D.C. Arthur Asiimwe. And originally, thank you for joining us on short notice, by the way.
Thank you, Debbie.
Originally from South Africa, Elzandi Oosthuizen is part of the Global Strategy Leadership Team at Bayer's Crop Science Division, where she leads the Enterprise Corn Product Team. And Fred Swaniker is an entrepreneur from Ghana. He founded and led the African Leadership Academy, the African Leadership University, ALX Tech Hubs throughout Africa, and SAND Technologies. Fred also, by the way, was named one of Time Magazine's 100 most influential people in the world in 2019. So thank you for being here with us today. And Fred, I will start with you. You travel all across Africa, obviously, and I think for some people in the room, the video that we watched might be a view of Africa that most people are not familiar with. Most people in this room have not been to Africa and might be surprised at how modern it is and how quickly it is growing. Can you paint a little bit of a picture of how Africa has changed just even over the last decade or two?
Sure. When you go to Africa, I think there are three things that you'll notice. The first is just how young it is, right? So I travel around the world, and when you go to Asia, it's just fascinating how people are just, much older. And the average age of an African is 19 years old. The average age in the US is 38. The average age in Germany is 44. The average in Japan is 49. So Africa is the youngest continent in the world, and will be 40% of the entire world's population by the end of the century. So that's the first thing that you notice. So yeah, it's just brimming with youth and so forth, right? The second thing you'll notice is just the infrastructure. The image that most people have of African infrastructure is so bad that even Africans themselves believe it. So I remember I took my team to India once, and I showed them a picture of a video. And I said, what city is this? And they put up their hand. It was Singapore, Qatar, Dubai. It was Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. And then I put in Google search for Ethiopia, and it showed images of like spears and all kinds of things like that, right? So because of the media, the way it portrays Africa, even Africans themselves who had not been to Ethiopia believed what they saw on CNN, right? So it's completely different, when you go there. You will be shocked, and it's, in many ways even more modern than St. Louis, right? And then the third thing you'll notice is just innovation, right? The innovation that's coming out of Africa, So, for example, I run an organization that over the last 20 years, we've invested about $1.7 billion in developing talent in Africa. And last year, we trained 700,000 software engineers and data scientists across the continent of Africa. So we're the largest trainer of tech talent in the world, right? We incubated 10,000 technology startups, right? We are just one organization. So all of these startups are driving innovations in healthcare and in infrastructure and just so many other things that you'll see, And so these are and they're sitting in Africa, and they're actually solving problems for the world, right? So I started another company about 20 years ago called Synexa Life Sciences. We've got 200 PhDs sitting in South Africa who are helping with clinical trials around the world. They work for BioNTech and GSK, Moderna. The first mRNA vaccine that later led to the COVID vaccine was done by our scientists in South Africa, right? a lot of innovation. My company, Sand Technologies, we've got 400 engineers. Our AI systems run the water supply for the City of London and for 3 other big utilities in the UK. And we're starting to do work with the City of St. Louis, so their water department. So you're seeing African talent sitting in Africa building global innovations for the world.
Thank you for that answer. Elzandi, we saw a lot in the video about agriculture, and I think that might be another thing people don't always associate with Africa. And clearly, Bayer is right in the middle of all that's happening in bioscience and agriculture in Africa. What is the company doing to optimize opportunities there?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And it's also a good time to talk about it because Bayer and even Legacy Monsanto was heavily involved and invested in Africa. And it took a long time to really reach the point that we're at. The continent is going through a revolution and transforming in the sense of adopting modern technology. If you think about it, just for those of you that's not familiar, it's still one of the continents with the highest level of food security challenges. And what many people also don't realize is it's a continent where corn is the staple food. It's not necessarily rice or wheat like in many other places around the world. And the smallholder farmers, these farmers farm on less than 10 hectares per farmer, but they produce 70% of the food that is consumed on the continent. So access to modern technology that can help them be more profitable and reduce their input costs is critical. And we at Bayer, our innovation and our product and our solutions that we offer can really have a significant impact for these farmers and for the continent. So earlier this year, we have opened a new state-of-the-art seed production facility in Kabwe in Zambia that will triple our seed supply capacity in Africa, so it will serve the broader Africa. It was a 32 million euro investment, and we already have tagged additional investments to improve the full ecosystem to ensure that we can supply these farmers with good quality seed that will improve their probability of success. But it goes beyond that, because if you help these farmers be successful, you touch their livelihoods and their family's quality of life, but you're also touching the community. And us at Bayer feel very strongly about this responsibility. A good example is, since we're a health sciences company, we are funding a health center in that community where our plant facility is that will provide essential healthcare services. It's a public-private collaboration. And then at the same time, obviously, we work on the infrastructure in order to support the seed supply facility. So we have revived the borehole, put up a water tank, and the pipes and the infrastructure necessary, and the immediate neighbors of the facility will also benefit from it. And I think that's my broader message. It goes far beyond the very large business opportunity. There's opportunity to really make a difference in millions of people's lives by just doing what we're all good at and taking it to Africa.
Thank you, Elzandi. Arthur, people I know who have been to Kigali come back just raving about it, and it truly is becoming a global symbol of innovation and resilience. But how would you say the city and, I guess, Rwanda what have they done? What are they doing well to become one of the fastest growing economies in the world?
Well, thank you, Debbie. I think, first of all, a warning, because we're talking about Africa, so expect a very strong African accent from me, because today is Africa. Yeah, I mean, Debbie, when you Google and like Google the top 10 fastest growing economies in the world, top 3 or top 5 will be Africa. You'll find the likes of Senegal, Rwanda, Kenya, Nigeria. When you look at the top 10 fastest growing cities, you'll find 5 are from Africa. Get the likes of Addis Ababa, Kigali, and all that. That shows you how much Africa is on the rise. So when I come to us, Kigali and Rwanda in particular, I think for us, it's just basically having a clear vision. We got a vision of where we want to be. We know we have an ugly history. Most of you know Rwanda and have heard about the genocide that happened there 30 years ago. But after that, we've put our acts together and set up a clear vision of where we want to be. And we've had a governance model that is based on delivering results. And we put on a lot of scrutiny by our leadership to ensure that whatever we have set up to achieve within different sectors, we aim to achieve that. So we've been lucky that we have had a clear vision. For example, now we have what we call Vision 2050, where we want to turn Rwanda into an upper middle-income country by 2050, with per capita GDP of about $14,000 for population. And for us to be able to achieve that, there are benchmarks that we need to attain year in, year out. So ever since the horrible events that happened in Rwanda, we're lucky that we have had a leadership that has created an environment, especially for the entrepreneurs, for the private sector, that is predictable for investments, that is sustainable, that is forward-looking. And so every investor would want to enter into such a market. And we've tried to position Rwanda, though we're a small country in the middle of Africa, but we've tried to create an environment where businesses or investors who want to test the African market come into Rwanda, find a conducive environment, find a simple entry point, and be able to set up your businesses, but also be able to access the larger African market. And we accompany you, because that's one of our policies. So I think, in a nutshell, to keep it simple, is we've had a clear roadmap of where we want to go. And we've been lucky to stick to that with a lot of discipline in whatever we do. You hear that Rwanda is ranked one of the least corrupt countries on the continent. That is because of leadership. You hear that Kigali is one of the safest cities on the continent. Kigali is the greenest city on the continent, one of the fastest growing cities. All that is done because we really we know where we came from and we know where we're headed to, and we stick to that.
All right, thank you, Arthur. We've been talking so much about all of the opportunities and how great things are in Africa, but I'm sure people who, Elzandi, might think there are some risks. I'm sure there are some things to be aware of. What would you say would be some of the investment risks versus reality?
So that's a loaded question. And like any business, there are always risks. There's no big rewards that comes without sacrifice and that do not come without risk. But at Bayer, we think about the risk and the reward always in one conversation. We think about it in one equation. And there's no better way to explain it. I want to tell a story that explains exactly how we think about it, because it's very simple for us. We have a big aspiration and mission to help combat and establish health for all, hunger for none, and that goes for the whole population. Earlier this year, when we opened that seed facility, our CEO, Bill Anderson, traveled to Africa, to Zambia, to open this facility. And always as part of these, that's what makes my job so great. Whenever we travel to a country, we always go out to the local communities and meet with farmers. So you really get a feel for not what is the media telling you, what's the picture that they're painting. You really see people in their real lives. And Bill Anderson met with a farmer, a smallholder farmer. Her name is Lisa. And the first question he asked her, Lisa grew up on a farm. She grew up on her mother's back, so she spent many years, decades, in agriculture in Africa, in Zambia. And he asked her, for how long has she been using our seed? And she said, for the past 5 years. So the second question he asked her, so what did you normally harvest on your cornfields and what are you harvesting now? And she said, in the past, The most that she could got was like 700 to 1,000 kilograms per hectare per year, and now she's harvesting 5 to 7,000 kilograms per hectare per year. So the follow-up question was immediately, so what do you do with the extra corn? Because in Africa, they very likely in the past years, they would keep the corn for their own consumption. And she said she keeps enough for her and her family's consumption, and the rest she sells, cash. He said her first word was cash. And obviously, I could imagine what I would have done with the cash, but she was much smarter. Bill asked her, so what do you do with the cash? How has that changed your life? And she said she buys more seeds, but not corn seeds, which big commercial farmers would immediately think the crop that they're growing. For her in Africa, she takes that cash, she buys vegetable seeds, and now she's expanding her farming operation to vegetables. She planted fruit trees, and the best part was she finished the story by saying her family's consumption, the nutrition, have changed forever. Now they are consuming much healthier, balanced meals because of the fact that she could expand and change her farming operation. So for us as Bayer, when we think about risks in a market, we always goes back to, but what is the reward? And reward, obviously, in a business sense, and how much money can we generate, and what will it do to our bottom line and our profit, but also, what is the reward for the impact that you can have on the human population there where you go do your business? And there is no place better than Africa to go explore what your business can do for that continent.
Fred, we mentioned that you have launched tech hubs across the continent, and obviously, if the average age is 19, there's a lot of people who are probably really much better than me with the technology. But we have heard the mayor of St. Louis talking about data centers. That's obviously a big deal. They use a lot of electricity, a lot of water, so that can be an issue. But also AI. How do you see those things impacting as you move forward?
Well, there's many disadvantages about being sort of the last place to develop, but one advantage is that you can leapfrog, and you can, move immediately to the most advanced technologies, right? So Africa is fortunate to be developing as an AI-first continent, right? So we are moving straight to, the work that I do, for example, we work with a lot of cities and states and countries to use AI to manage systems at scale. And I've been very surprised at how far behind the US is with its infrastructure compared to where we are in Africa and in other parts of the world where we work. So for example, in Rwanda, the big challenge that we have is that there's a shortage of doctors. In Africa, the doctor-patient ratio is about 8,000 patients to a doctor. In South Sudan, it's 66,000 patients to a doctor. In the US, it's about 200 to 300 patients per doctor in cities. But in rural parts of the US, it's about 2,000 patients to a doctor, like rural Missouri and like rural Arkansas. And so when, the nice thing about constraints is that it drives innovation. You have to reimagine and reinvent everything. You can't do things the traditional way. So what we are doing in Rwanda with the Ministry of Health is we have developed a new system that we call the health operating system, which is basically 3 parts. One is where you use SpaceX satellite, high-speed bandwidth to connect rural clinics with fastest connectivity you can imagine. And then, we started putting electronic healthcare records and sensors to track all kinds of things like the temperature of vaccines in fridges and everything like that. And then we link it with Zipline, a company that delivers medicine by drones. So for example, if a sensor picks up that a vaccine is out of temperature range, it sends a trigger to Zipline, and 30 minutes later, fresh vaccine is delivered by drone. And the first country in the world to develop this drone technology was in Rwanda. So anyway, you connect these clinics, and the second thing we do is we are augmenting healthcare professionals with AI. So imagine a community healthcare worker or a nurse, because we don't have lots of doctors, but now you give them these tools that allow them to do more sophisticated diagnosis. For example, there's a belt that you can put on a mother, a pregnant mother, and it can detect the health of the mother and the baby, and if there's any complication, you can do telemedicine to a doctor sitting somewhere else, right? There's all kinds of AI devices that allows a nurse to do things that maybe a doctor would have done, or a community healthcare worker to do things. So, and then the final part is once you've connected the clinics and you have all of the, you've augmented these healthcare professionals, you have all this data. So then we've created a National Health Intelligence Center for the Minister of Health to track real-time everything that's going on in the country. You can see all the ambulances moving in the country, and inside every ambulance there's a machine vision that can detect whether you've got a baby or a snake bite victim, so it can route the ambulance to the right place. You can see the next pandemic before it happens. You can start to make better decisions about how to allocate your resources, what kind of policies should you make, so you're not flying in the dark anymore as a leader. And this is happening live in Rwanda. Right? So we are able to therefore take the advantage of not having the legacy systems to leapfrog and go straight to the latest technology. So that's why I think as you think about your engagement with Africa, the mistake I see a lot of leaders make in the US is they think of Africa only as a source of demand. And yes, you should look at that. Mm-hmm. There is demand there. There's a growing population. You can sell goods and services there. But you should also really be looking at Africa as a source of supply, right? And supply in two ways. One is talent. You can't get this. That is one game we are winning, for sure, right? There's no other continent in the world that is going to beat us in talent, right? 40% of the world's population, youngest population in the world, it's fact. So if you need talent, there's no other place you'll get it from talent than Africa. And the second source supply of innovation, right? So many of these problems that we've solved in Africa, like the healthcare problem that I mentioned, is going to be exactly perfectly suited for rural Missouri, right? And even urban cities where you can't get care to some people. You need to, with all the cuts in the federal budget for healthcare, you need to learn how to do more with less. And we've been doing that in Africa, right? We're doing that, right? Same thing with what we're doing in education. The way we are training software engineers and data scientists at massive scale and lower cost. A city like St. Louis needs that because if you want to compete in the AI age, you need to do a lot of workforce development. So when you go to Africa, open your eyes to the innovation that's there, the radically different ways of doing things, and that's what you get when you go there. You bring that back to a place like the US, which needs to move forward.
I want to get a couple of real quick questions in before we wrap up here. And Fred had mentioned the United States being behind on infrastructure. I want to ask you, Arthur, because a lot of investment has come into Africa from China. China has been heavily investing in Africa and has been the largest trading partner with Africa for a dozen years or 20 years maybe. Is the United States very far behind? Are we just playing catch up at this point?
That's a tough question, Debbie. I'll try to attempt to answer it. But let me just touch a little bit on what Fred just said.
He's a politician.
He's got it covered.
He represents the government.
You see, Fred cannot blow his own trumpet, but this is one of Africa's most successful entrepreneurs, and he has a sharp eyesight on where a gap exists and how to invest in it. For example, he's put up a university in Kigali, an incredible academic institution, now about 30,000 students. But it's not only serving Rwandans, it's serving students from across the continent. That's why he's talking about talent, creating the pool of talent. Students from almost 47 countries are within this academic institution. And when we look at the future, that's the kind of investment that people should be looking at. Where is the gap? How do I tap into this gap to explore the entire continent of Africa? And it's happening. There's so many good stories. So Fred is one of the good stories that you can pick from. Coming to China. You see, China occupied a space that was there. And it's true, China is Africa's biggest trading partner. It occupied a space that was there for quite some time. And Africa, of course, is growing, and Africa needs partners to trade with. And China came and, occupied this space. But it's never too late. The potentiality of Africa is huge. It's never too late. Even if the US comes in now, there's still a lot of virgin areas on the continent that an American investor can look into. And what we're looking for on the continent is sustainable investments. We don't want these, quick win investments where you come and set up something small and reap returns and run away. We need something that is sustainable. I'll give you an example. You've heard about our issues with our neighbors in Congo. Good enough, the Trump administration has helped us in coming up with a peace agreement. But one important component of what we're discussing is an economic agreement. And we're looking at putting in place long-term sustainable economic projects. I'll give an example of the rare earth mineral sector. We're tired of artisanal mining that is not sustainable. We're looking at massive industrial mining. And that gives opportunities to the American investors, opportunities to people that are here that want to look into this space. How are you able to come on the continent and set up large-scale industrial mining, go into areas of processing, refining, because that way we want to see how you can add value to whatever we're getting from there. So China is there on the continent, but there's a lot of potential on the continent, and there's room for all sorts of investors, but what we're looking for is sustainable investment.
And one last question, and this is for all of you. For people in the audience who may run a business or work for a company that would be thinking of investing in Africa or open to it, are there other cities in the United States that are doing this well, or other sectors that people can look to for an example? Do you know of any other places in the country that could give us a good example?
So I can't speak to other cities. I don't know if there's other cities that do it well or better than us in St. Louis. But me being born and raised in South Africa, and now I'm a St. Louis citizen for a long time, and this is home to me, I think there's something we can do better. You have to go visit Africa.
Yes.
You should take your family. You should send your teams. I promise you, there's 3 things that's going to happen to you. Once your feet touch soil in Africa, you will never think the same about the human population. That will be changed forever. You will never think about your business the same way that you did before you visited Africa. And I promise you, the 3rd thing is you're going to fall in love with Africa. It's a very vibrant, contagious continent.
Fred?
I agree with everything that was just said by Mr. Oosthuizen. What I would add is, in terms of where U.S. cities that are doing this well, I actually don't know of any U.S. cities that are doing this well. I know that there are Chinese cities that are doing this well. I visited China I've only been there once in 2013, and I was surprised that every city I went to had a very clear investment plan about why you should invest in their city. And they had plans, and they would travel around the world trying to attract investment into their cities, right? So they go and compete. So if I think about it, actually St. Louis, maybe you're actually ahead of the rest of the US in that regard. I mean, if you look at the fact that this event is happening, and if you look at a nation state, they typically have a foreign policy, and then they will have an ambassador who will go and represent them globally, and then through that they tend to attract trade and investment into their countries, right? You have 3 of those 4 things in St. Louis. I'm not sure you have a foreign policy yet. Maybe that's the one thing you need, a very clear foreign policy to say this is what we are going to do as St. Louis. But you have an ambassador. His name is Rodney Boyd, right? I mean, I've never met, at least for Africa, right? I've never met a more proud citizen of St. Louis. He goes around everywhere. I've never met anyone more proud of any city. I've never met anyone more who he first and foremost identifies himself by a city and just keeps going on and on and on about it. I was like, what is the St. Louis? You know, so much so that he attracted me to come here to do business, right? And you know, so he's a great ambassador. And you have delegations that have been coming to, you know, Kigali and other places. You're setting up a sister city relationship. And so you have those ingredients, right? And so I'd encourage you to actually double down. I think you may actually be one of the leaders in the US in this regard. And I think probably because you have more incentive, right, than other places, you know, in the US. So I'd encourage you to just double down. Leverage your ambassador. You need other ambassadors. Maybe who's your Latin America ambassador? Who's your Asia ambassador, right? Who are the Rodney Boyds for the rest of them, right? And I think if you do that, St. Louis can really drive economic growth because you can then start to tap into this global economy.
Well, thank you so much. That is Fred Swaniker and Elzandi Oosthuizen and Arthur Asiimwe. Can we please get a big round of applause for our expert panel today?
Wow, that was terrific. Double down, did you hear that? It's time for all of us to double down and let's go get on that plane and head to Africa as we were just instructed. No, thank you, Debbie, Arthur, Elzandi, and Fred for this very informative discussion. I literally could have sat here for another hour listening to you, and so we really appreciate your time, the amount of travel you all took to get here, and just sharing your thoughts and your experiences. That was really heartfelt and very, very informative. We have a small gift for you. So my colleague Stella is right over here at the table, and Stella has handmade glass bowls that are colored in each of your home country. And these were handmade by local artists at St. Louis's very own Third Degree Glass Factory. So please accept these. You can see the bowls are designed in the colors of Rwanda, South Africa, and Ghana, and they're just beautiful. So, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the 2025 World Trade Center Growing Global Luncheon. I want to thank again our presenting sponsor, Bayer, and all of you for taking time to be here with us today for another successful event. And I want to thank our World Trade Center and St. Louis Mosaic Project team and our parent organization, the St. Louis Economic Development Partnership. We look forward to seeing you again next year. Have a great day.